welcome back to All3D's podcast, Growing Tech Fast. Now, this is the condensed podcast where we talk about the tech startup world with those who have grown them. So today I'm joined by Enrico, who is the founder and CEO of Botkeeper. It's great to have you on the pod today, Enrico. How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. It's great to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, I'm super excited to hear a little bit more about your experience and you're kind of building up Botkeeper. So to start, it would be great to hear a little bit about Botkeeper and what your mission is.
Sure. So I'd say fundamentally our mission is to revolutionize the accounting industry. And in doing that, we want to enable accountants. I looked at the space and said, there's two paths you could take. You could build the future AI accounting firm that's going to disrupt the industry at large, try to be the provider of accounting services to everyone, or we could build software that we equip the existing 140 something thousand incumbent accounting firms with and enable them to elevate to the next level and serve the needs of the market. And me being a statistician and quant major, I just couldn't. The fastest rate to have impact was enablement, and it's to me a more favorable rate because everyone is like your friend and rooting for you to help the industry versus like rooting against you to try to disrupt it. So yeah, that's I'd say the fundamental message is how do we make accounting and the accounting industry better? How do we solve the supply demand gap in human capital versus business needs? And then how do we, in doing that, deliver a lot more insight and value to businesses and business owners to help them grow their businesses faster, do more, have more impact, and have less failure? Because I tell everyone all the time, accounting is one of the primary reasons businesses fail. They don't understand the cash flows, they don't understand the profitability or dynamics of the business, and how many companies have died that could have cured cancer, could have solved some major tech challenge or hurdle that we have, made lives incrementally better, but we never got to experience it because their accounting wasn't good.
Interesting. Yeah, that sounds super cool. And can you tell us, I guess, a little bit more about your background and how you became interested in fintech in the first place?
So I'd say I'm a serial entrepreneur by fault. I don't know how to not try to run headfirst into problems, and so I see a problem in industry or business, like I'll have to try to solve it, and then one of the easiest ways to solve it at scale is to form a business around it so that it's generating revenue and profits that you can staff and hire more people, because it almost always takes a village to move a mountain. And so I had started a number of businesses, one in college that automated lighting analysis and design. I'm a quant major by background and an entrepreneur major out of Babson College. The business grew fast. We were like 60 employees by my senior year in college, and eventually got acquired. Biggest headache we had with that business, lo and behold, our accounting. So accounting wasn't keeping up. To me, it was like, all right, now I need to get into a business that's going to deliver accounting services to other companies and solve that headache for me, make my pain go away. And so that led me to building and growing a CAS practice and a tech enabled. So it was like there's bookkeeping the way everyone was doing it, and then there was like we were doing it with a lot of tech and integrating different technologies and decision trees and some automated workflows. And then I just saw that while that was great and that let us scale a lot faster, that helped us do call it 110% of the work or 115% of the work with one person, and that was big in a capital constraint. The human capital constraints were exacerbating. Like Wall Street Journal just published an article recently where the accountants enrollment is down another 7-ish% in the US. That's tens of thousands fewer accountants entering the industry. And like 10 or 15% incremental improvement was not going to change the world. And that's where I had the idea for Botkeeper, which was, all right, two problems I identified in the industry. One, there's this over amplification. Like Wolters Kluwer, Thomson Reuters built companies that vertically integrated the tax and audit stack for firms. So you could have this one solution to manage everything, nice integrated, et cetera. But CAS was like the ugly department of your firm, that low margin, like hard to manage, wasn't seen as like glorious. And so they just ignored it. And the way the world solved that problem was creating a ton of little niche apps to do various things. But the downside to an accounting firm doing that is one accountant now has to interface with 8 to 10 apps across, 10 to 20 clients. That's a lot of system switching, a lot of siloed data sets that aren't organized, a lot to manage. You got a Google Sheet somewhere that's trying to track and keep it all together. So if we could create one vertically integrated system for CAS, that would be huge. That would make it more efficient. One single picture to your client, they're not having to jump in and out of a bunch of systems to see their financial picture. And then part two was, well, if we did that, that system would have a lot of data in it, because you'd integrate it with all your data sets to bring them all in a central place. And if we could build machine learning models on that data, we could actually automate away a lot of the work that is being done in that system. And so that was the vision for Botkeeper, was let's build this autonomous, or call it vision, was build this autonomous platform that could be a robot bookkeeper, a Botkeeper for you, get a lot of the heavy lifting, dirty work done, and then let you spend most of your time doing like high value insights, KPIs, forecasting, budgeting, analysis, advisory. Because right now it's like 95% of the time is spent trying to get all the data in, organized, and generate the financial statements, and 5% might be spent reviewing it to glean any sort of insights you can provide to your client. If we could flip that on its head, you totally transform the value creation for the client and have way more impact on a business. So that was the vision. And fast forward, it only took 8 years and $100 something million later to pull it off. So a lot longer than I thought, a lot more money than I thought, but we're here.
Yeah, and sounds like it's worth it, right?
Yeah. 100%. I mean, because it's like, at this point now, there's 10,000 companies that have been impacted by a Botkeeper. There's, hundreds of accounting firms that use it, that depend on it. And you can already see it's changing the industry, like what norms used to be. And a lot of times, like, we got criticized for those changes. We were, I'd like to say first mover gets a lot of arrows in their back. Second, that's why usually they say it's better to be second, because you let the first company take all the arrows, and then you kind of like skate on by. But someone has to be first, and so we had a lot of, I think, innovative ideas. Got challenged a lot in the early years, and now those innovative ideas that were thought as being crazy or scrutinized are now norms in the industry, and that's cool.
For sure.
You just have to be persistent.
Yeah, and everyone loves a disruptor, right? So
yeah. Enabler. I think like there's a potentially negative connotation with disruptors.
Yeah, I guess we touched on it a little bit, but we always talk about on this podcast the highs and lows of startup life, and there are many lows, but I think there are also lots and lots of highs that kind of make the lows worthwhile. So what are some of the key moments in your career so far, and particularly at Botkeeper, that have shaped you and the way you kind of see the startup world?
I mean, I think one of the coolest things about being an entrepreneur, if you stick with it and you just keep going, is you're gonna face so many challenges and so many problems and so many like what would be perceived as impossible situations. And that's the cool thing about entrepreneurs. We don't think anything's impossible. So the persistence and the continuity of like attacking those challenges changes how you think about the world and everything. So in my life, if there's a problem, like I'm always like, give me a second, let me think about it. And then like I got a way we can do this. Like we can actually pull this off. It could be, how do we transport all the kids at school to this offsite? And like there's not like, we'll figure this out. So I think it changes. You don't see everything becomes a yes. Like anything can be done. And having that mindset transforms just like, I think, like how you live your life.
Mm-hmm.
The I'd say like the reality of the challenge, I think, for the entrepreneur dilemma is you hit milestones and like, hitting our first 100K in revenue. It's like, oh my God, we did this. Like our first 100 clients, like, wow, we got there. Then like you double that and you're like, there's like a flip. Like you triple that into like, and then you hit maybe it's 1 million. It's like, that was great. But it was like shorter and shorter lived.
Yeah.
But the problems get bigger. And so I think like that's the highs and lows dynamic is you're always chasing a high that's never gives you as much fulfillment as maybe like the first time.
Yeah.
Um, and the lows kind of almost get deeper because they become bigger challenges, bigger hurdles to clear. And it's just, trying to maintain some sort of balance where, and, find purpose and meaning and a lot of other things that, can keep you, optimistic and high spirited to, there's not a lot of people. I think like it takes a somewhat crazy person to, wake up every morning excited to bang your head against the wall and try to move forward. So,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
for us, it was the biggest high I've had recently was we had a vision of like one day having our own conference. Like if we could be big enough and have enough of an impact on the industry that warranted being a Botkeeper conference, we called it AI Unchained. That would be so cool. And as of 3 weeks ago, we had that first conference, and there was like 200. It was totally sold out. It was like 250 people in attendance, another like 250 online, 2,500 in total. And I was just like, oh my God, like the impact that you can see, like physically see it versus like that's the downside of software is it's somewhat nebulous out there. But that was a really cool moment for us.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I guess it's all about celebrating the small wins as and when they come, and just making sure that you kind of appreciate all of those wins and all of those milestones along the way. But it sounds like you've had lots of them, which is great. And we talked about balance there a little bit. I guess how do you balance innovation and experimentation, but also having that need for stability and predictability in your business?
I think it really comes down to people. So the same person, it's really hard for the same person to do both. The same person might be able to be highly stable and slightly innovative, but that's going to be minor incremental gains that will go predominantly unnoticed. Like think of like pavement. Like there's been tiny little gains to like how we pave roads. We would never know. Like, but it's probably 50% more efficient than it was 5, 10 years ago. But do we notice that change? So you really need to have like teams that are just dedicated to nothing but innovation, teams that are dedicated to doing nothing but making the core, as stable, as reliable, as responsive as possible. That's frankly how we balance it is we put a good number of resources on, stabilizing the core and keeping consistency and continuity there and reliability. But then we also put a lot of resources on driving innovation and just thinking in a way that's like, I want you to reinvent. I want you to basically constantly reinvent Botkeeper to the point where like the greatest fear is like we've optimized away Botkeeper. So we've got ideas for how there'll be like one day a globally distributed general ledger, and that would eliminate all the AI aspect, or like not all of it, but a bunch of the AI we've spent time building. Because if transactions, if there's a undisputed general ledger and blockchain on the transaction, and this person's debit is that person's credit, there's no longer a need for AI to predict what it was. You just know. And so, yeah, like I said, we're always just pushing, like from an innovation standpoint, think of things that would totally throw away everything we've done now, and don't be afraid to do it. That's the only way we're going to get somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I guess going on this journey and learning everything you've learned over the last few years, especially, what advice would you give to a first-time founder that's starting up either a fintech company or really anywhere in tech?
So team. So like you can't have this stability and innovation without team and people. Botkeeper is now, I want to say about 500 people. So like we didn't get to where we are because it was like the Enrico Roadshow. It was like I'm insignificant to the company compared to the rest of the org at this point. But as an early founder, like I can't emphasize enough, they're trying to be a solopreneur. If you think about everything you need to do, you need to come up with a solution. You need to like optimize that. You need to create value. You need to figure out the business model and economics of it. You need to be out selling it, be marketing it, like operationally delivering what it is you're doing. The biggest mistake I see a lot of entrepreneurs do is they've got one really great strength. Maybe it's on the sales, marketing, and a tech side, what have you. And then they like have this like, because entrepreneurs think they can do everything better than everyone else. It's like literally there's 3 traits to an entrepreneur that like ultra successful people all have. And it's this like a fundamental belief that you can do it better. They try to do everything themselves, and you won't be able to move fast enough or get far enough. And you're lying to yourself. Like you can do the thing you're naturally good at probably better than most, but you're less strategic, your weaker areas, like you're not going to be able to do those as good as someone that's their natural thing. So as a founder, try to found a company. Like first look at your network, figure out who who's really strong and skilled in those areas. Always punch above your weight class in that. Don't hire someone that's at the same level as you. If you're, call it a great engineer, you want to hire an even greater marketing person and an even greater salesperson, and an even greater operations person, or what have you, in terms of like delivering the solution. And start that team with it's like 4 people. You really need 3 to 4 people to start a company. If you had 3 or 4 people, now just think about it like you have that many more hours compounding into building the thing that you're building. Say it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert, your company is going to become an expert at its thing a lot faster than if it's just you doing it. And the other thing I say, which is counter, I think, to a lot of people, is don't quit your job until your company is generating enough money that it's on the verge of replacing your income. Because everyone likes to say, like, quit your job. It's like, no. Moonlight or gig and do your job as long as you possibly can, because it benefits you in 2 ways. One, you have a higher potential of surviving because it takes way longer than you expected. Like Botkeeper took way longer to get to this point than we thought. It takes way more money than you expected. And if you stood your bank account's draining down, you're not going to be thinking clearly about the business. You're going to be worrying about how to pay the mortgage or, what have you. So you'll have a greater potency of surviving, but you also will keep more of your company. So if you do end up raising capital, for Botkeeper, I put a lot of my life savings into it. I was fortunate that I had other businesses prior. I moonlighted prior. I created the first component of my wealth in college, which is a bubble where you don't have anything to worry about. Student debt, it's free debt for the time being. So stay in that bubble as long as you can, isolated and protected by gig or other work. And then when you go out and you have to raise, if your first raise, you're doing $1 million in revenue, the valuation, how much equity you get to keep, everything totally changes. And that has exponential impacts on, what you get to keep at the end of the day. I've seen founders that, because they quit the job right out of the gate and raise some pre-seed money to get this thing off the ground, by the time they're doing a B round, they've got less than 10% of the company left, maybe 5 to 8%. At that point, you're basically a highly equity incentivized employee. And if you go 1 or 2 more rounds, there's a good chance the C-suite they get hired in to help take it to the next level might have more equity than the founders. And you hate seeing that happen. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great advice. I really like that answer. Okay, and then I guess looking ahead, with lots of changes in the fintech space and kind of constant, again, ups and downs in the general space, what do you see as the future of fintech, and how will Botkeeper play a role in that future?
I think it's gonna be hard for me to predict, call it like the future to an industry at large, which is like so many different things. I think the key is gonna be whatever technologies companies are using that have AI in them, that's gonna be fundamentally more critical than it's ever been. Like someone having a great CRM versus a really great AI enabled CRM, the company with the AI enabled CRM is going to be able to do so much more than your team, and will leap and bounds exceed you and wipe you out of business so fast. So doubling down, like really figuring out what's the platform of technology that you're going to build your company on, I think is like super critical, because that's going to, whoever puts a lot of thought into that and picks the right partners is going to be the one that ultimately succeeds. But you're gonna see a space that changes so fast. The languages change so fast. The like what models, like what AI aggregators and stuff that are out there, API aggregators. It's just gonna be it's all gonna be about speed, efficiency, and data. So how do you amass the most data the fastest? How do you utilize it the quickest? And then how do you deliver value in a super quick way is going to be where the fintech space is going for Botkeeper. We were lucky to be first. Like I said, we got a lot of arrows on our back along the way. But now we're in a really good spot because we have, let's argue, the largest data set of anyone. Our models are more advanced than anyone. And then you have this compounding thing, which automatically creates moats. We can do things for a fraction of the cost that anyone else could attempt to do now, that in and themselves are going to be barriers to entry into our space. So yeah, move quick.
Move quick. I like it. And final question from me then, and I am going to put you on the spot a little bit here. I love this question. So for you, throughout your life, I guess, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received and has carried with you throughout your career?
I'll say probably it's hard to say like throughout my career, because it's been, there's things you like lean on more now than you did then. But a thing most recently is there's Navy SEALs, Team 6. Did this like question, like what makes you guys so great? Like how do you pick the people that are going to be on this team? This is the best of the best of the best team. And what they basically said is like you can look at when you figure out who is going to bring in. So from a founders, like fundamentally the most important thing is, as an entrepreneur or CEO, is the team you surround yourself with. You can optimize for performance or you can optimize for trust. And a lot of people think like the person who's like the best at marketing is going to be who I should go with. It's actually like an ideal world is the person who's best at marketing that you trust the most. And it's like in the upper right quadrant there. That's a really hard person to find. And what they've found out is that, like, you're much better optimizing for second best in performance and full best in like total trust. And I can tell you, like, from my executive team, I trust them like entirely, to the point where most of the if there's like a challenge, like I'll challenge things 100%. But I always tell them like I'm gonna fight. At the end of the day, if we're at a standstill, I defer to you. Like you make the call. That's a trust thing. That's not a performance thing. Because I know they're gonna do it right. I know they're gonna like keep the company in mind. I know they're not gonna like just totally structure it for their best outcome. And so that's been something where, like, as I've thought about our team, the biggest shortcomings and setbacks have come where I optimize too heavily on performance and not enough on trust, and it becomes toxic to the organization over time. So yeah, and you can Google this, like just Google Navy SEALs Team 6 trust performance, and there's like a nice little write up. Simon Sinek did it, talk about it, which I like. So yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I might actually do that. I think trust is underestimated a lot of the time, and a lot of the time it leads to high performance and leads to a high performing culture, at least I think. And trust and accountability are so important. So yeah, another great answer.
I don't spend a lot of time. I don't spend any time micromanaging our team, and that just it accelerates. Like I get to focus on things I need to do for the company, which are raise capital, like set the vision, like work with product and engineering on ideas, like do minor tweaks and stuff in marketing, but never like be involved in anything outside of that. So it's like day to day in marketing, day to day in operations, day to day in finance, like all those things, innovations that are happening in all the departments. They all happen. I don't worry about it. I'm totally
Mhm.
trusting of the leaders that they'll figure things out. And I usually find out about things that like, hey, we had to like, let go of this person or this happened. And they're usually telling it to me after it's been solved.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm like, I don't even want to, like, why are we even having this combo? This is a waste of time. It's already
Yeah.
solved. It's a moot point. Um, but having that unrelentless, trust, I think is uber important.
Yeah, great foundation to have that set up. That sounds amazing. Well, it's been great having you on the podcast. I've really enjoyed
Thank
hearing a
you.
little bit more about yourself and Botkeeper, and I think it's a really exciting time for you right now, and really excited to see what comes. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on the episode. It's been a pleasure.
Don't mention. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Take care.
No problem. And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. We'll see you next time.